Mother, why do you get the first night with the human? That's not fair. He steps forward under the diffused glow spilling through the high oval windows of the alien chamber. He has not yet grown accustomed to these spiraling walls, carved with the care of 1,000 hands, nor to the presence of two women whose eyes reflect an otherworldly fire in the dimly lit expanse. Caleb Hart's pulse thumps in his ears. He runs his fingertips over the inked patterns winding across his chest and arms, a nervous habit he can't quite shake, even here. Yeleth stands off to his left, mint-green skin looking impossibly soft to the touch. Her ears, elongated and tipped in a graceful point, prick forward in keen attention. Light pools on the pearlescent patterns shimmering along her shoulders, dancing in subtle arcs that accentuate the shape of her lean body. Her hair cascades down her back in a brilliant sweep of sky blue that shifts with her every breath, falling across her collarbone in windswept lines that speak of restlessness. She has told him little about her life, but he can see how longing flickers in her vivid amethyst eyes. He can sense something in her stance, hope, curiosity, perhaps a need to claim a destiny different from the one fate or tradition has assigned. Opposite her, Lir'ava waits, radiant in her own quiet way. She's taller, more regal, with jade-green skin etched in faint swirl-like patterns that echo the polished elegance of malachite. Her hair, a deep cerulean with delicate silver threads, falls in gentle waves against her back, giving her an air of timeless wisdom. Her eyes shimmer in a molten interplay of crimson and gold, as though they harbor a small sun in each iris. Where Yeleth shifts and drums her fingers in quiet frustration, Lir'ava stands still as a statue, exuding a gentle but commanding presence. She tilts her head, eyes drifting closed, as though listening for some distant resonance that only she can hear. Caleb has come to learn that this is how Lir'ava consults what she calls the inner stream of time, an almost meditative gesture her people revere. Silence pulses in the space between them, broken by an almost musical hum that travels along the walls, resonating faintly through the floor. Caleb tries to settle his breathing. He has traveled to many worlds, charted unknown mountains and valleys, braved the storms of swirling gaseous planets, and navigated the labyrinthine tunnels of floating asteroid colonies. Yet never has he experienced anything quite like this, being the center of two potent gazes, each belonging to a woman who is both alien and strangely familiar. He recalls his original mission, carried on dusty star charts and mandated by corporate directives. Somewhere in that swirl of orders, he lost track of who he was. The mention of the planet, unnamed on human registers but known by the natives simply through its living essence, intrigued him enough to volunteer for exploration. He expected to find wonders, to map them, and eventually to depart with regret and a sense of awe. But he did not expect the day Yeleth saved his life, nor the moment Lir'ava took him under her protection as an honored guest or potential mate. Standing with them now, he thinks of the vow he made after losing his partner in that ill-fated crash on the outer rim of Fera, that he would never again allow himself to become too close to anyone on a mission. He had always justified it to himself, muttering that he was just here to observe, to record, to survive, and nothing more. But the swirl of conflicting emotions in his chest suggests that vow is already broken. Yeleth breaks the hush first. Her voice, though gentle, carries a hint of frustration. "Mother, why do you get the first night with the human?" She glances sidelong at Caleb, an almost defiant warmth in her amethyst eyes. "That's not fair." Lir'ava opens her eyes. The molten glow within them flickers, revealing a calm that counters her daughter's impatience. "It is our custom," she replies. Her words chime softly with that undercurrent of ringing stone. "The matron ensures the safe initiation of any new bloodline. That is how we have survived. You know this." A tension ripples in Yeleth's shoulders, a subtle hiss of breath escaping her lips. Her slender fingers drum along her forearm in a pattern that Caleb has begun to recognize as nervous energy combined with signals from her people's courtship traditions. He wonders how many times she's done that since they met, unconsciously letting her restlessness slip out in a flurry of light taps. He is no scholar of alien culture, but he senses that their arrangement is not a simple matter of mother and daughter locked in a small rivalry. It's more complex, entwined in generations of tradition, as well as personal longing. Lir'ava is the leader, the matron, possibly older than Yeleth by many decades or centuries, though the lines of age are subtle in their species. Yeleth, younger and more adventurous, stands on the precipice of forging her own path, and then there is him, the human, in the middle. He wonders what would happen if he tried to interject, to protest that no one simply gets him. But he also recalls how little control he's had since he stepped foot on this planet. He steps forward, letting the swirl of tattoos along his torso reflect the warm light. The intricate lines winding over his pectorals and around his biceps carry stories of Earth's legends, combined with stylized cartographic lines from the places he has charted. For a moment he traces one of these lines at his collarbone, the old reflex comforting him. "I'm not just something to be claimed," he says quietly, voice low, though he tries to keep any accusatory edge out. "But I understand tradition." Yeleth's gaze flickers to him. "And do you understand how limiting that tradition can be?" Lir'ava's measured expression momentarily falters, revealing a trace of sadness. "We are protectors. Our rituals keep us strong as a people. This planet is demanding, and so is survival. We cannot afford to break custom lightly." Caleb runs a hand over the fuzz of hair at the back of his head. He shaved it close just before his arrival on this expedition, preferring the practicality of a clean scalp under his helmet. But the humidity and climate of this planet have left his skin perpetually moist, reminding him of the tropical zones on Earth. He tries to weigh his words carefully. "I don't want to disrespect anything here, but I also don't want to be forced into something I'm not ready to accept." Lir'ava dips her head slowly. "It is not force, but we must come to an agreement soon. Time does not wait. My people see you as an opportunity, perhaps to bond with an outsider, perhaps to learn from you. In our custom, if we do not bless that union properly, another tribe may try to claim you for themselves. You have already seen glimpses of their aggression." He recalls the moment when Yeleth saved him from a predatory creature in the swaying forest. At the time, he thought it was an ordinary beast drawn by the scent of an off-worlder. But later, Yeleth mentioned with a proud tilt of her chin that the creature had been marked by the rival tribe to ward off intruders. They had begun staking their claim over these lands, turning predators into living boundaries. The memory tightens his jaw. Indeed, everything is more complicated than it first seemed. Yeleth exhales, stepping closer to Caleb. The faint warmth radiating from her body makes him aware of how differently her people regulate temperature. He remembers how her skin felt when she took his hand in the forest. A moment of surprising mutual wonder. "He should choose," Yeleth says softly. "He should decide who he shares his nights with, if any." Her voice carries a softness that belies her frustration, as though she cannot fully bring herself to rebel outright. Lir'ava's posture shifts, a slight tilt of her hip, the ghost of a sigh. "He is not ignorant," she says regarding Caleb. "He knows his own mind, but the custom remains. The matron ensures the bonding. This is not only about desire, child, it is also about protection. Do you think I claim him for selfish reasons? No. Our lineage depends on preserving harmony. If the other tribes see us fractured, they will attack. And if the bonding is not recognized by me, it will not be recognized by the High Council. Without that acknowledgement, Caleb will never truly be one of us, and the rival tribe has free rein to seize him." Caleb tries to steady his breathing. This talk of seizing him like some prize unsettles him, stirring up memories of corporate superiors who once treated him as an expendable resource. He left Earth to escape that dynamic, yet he seems to have found it once again, albeit under an alien banner. He gently clears his throat. I might not have a full grasp of your culture, but I do know I'm not here to be an object. I'm willing to work with you to find common ground, for the sake of peace. He pauses, the memory of his last mission flaring to life, the face of his lost partner, a pilot who never made it back from the wreckage, stings at the back of his mind. I just don't want to lose someone again to conflict that could be avoided. Yeleth's gaze softens, and she moves her hand as though she means to place it on his shoulder, but she stops mid-motion. Caleb, the reason I question tradition isn't just for personal desire. I truly believe we can innovate. I want to see changes in how we bond with outsiders, make alliances rather than forced claims. If we keep doing things the old way, we'll stifle ourselves. My mother is wise, but our people have lost sight of the possibility of forging genuine relationships. All we do is follow the script laid down for us by ancestors who never knew a human, never thought we might meet someone from beyond the stars. The hum that resonates through the walls intensifies, signaling a shift in the planet's subtle rhythms. From outside, a soft breeze sweeps along the corridors, carrying the fragrance of the forest's large petal-like leaves, reminiscent of sandalwood and summer storms. Lir'ava's shoulders roll back. We will speak no more on this tonight, she says. We must prepare ourselves. The foreign watchers from the rival tribe are near. Let us gather in the upper spire and plan how to keep them at bay. Yeleth turns away in clear frustration, her sky-blue hair brushing against the carved stone archway as she stalks off. Caleb stands there, uncertain, until Lir'ava nods for him to follow. The swirl of tension remains as he steps with them into a wide corridor, the walls gently pulsing with a faint luminescence, reminiscent of quartz catching the last rays of twilight. The day will end soon, and with it, the question of the first night looms. He senses that events are moving swiftly toward a confrontation, both external and within himself. They climb a spiraling ramp leading to an open chamber at the top of the structure. From this vantage, one can see the canopy of the great forest that stretches all around, the trees with their shimmering leaves rustling as though whispering secrets. The horizon line glows in soft pink and orange hues, the planet's two suns having nearly sunk beneath the jagged ridges far to the west. In the fading light, the world outside becomes both wondrous and foreboding. Yeleth stands by the ledge, arms crossed against her chest. The amethyst in her eyes catches the last glimmers of day, turning them a haunting shade of violet. She says nothing as Caleb approaches, but her posture speaks volumes. Lir'ava remains behind, speaking quietly with several tall figures from her tribe, each bearing markings on their arms that look like swirling runes. Their low voices blend with the soft hush of the wind. Caleb wants to comfort Yeleth, but he is unsure how to bridge the gap. He settles for a quiet approach, letting his presence be an invitation rather than an intrusion. After a few moments of silence, she speaks in a low voice. I know she has reasons. I know the tribe's survival is at stake, but it never feels good to be seen as lesser, like my only purpose is to stand aside until I have permission to act. He sets a hand gently on her shoulder, feeling the smooth warmth of her green skin beneath his palm. I'm not an expert in your culture, but from what I've seen, you aren't lesser. You saved me from that creature. You guided me when I was lost in the forest. You're more than capable. A flicker of gratitude passes over her features. Thank you, but in our tradition, the mother is the matron. I can't supersede her authority even if I feel differently. She hesitates, her slender fingers drumming against her arm again. I want something real, not a ceremony just because I was told to. If I share a bond with someone, I want it because we chose each other freely. Is that such a strange notion? His chest tightens with empathy. Memories of his partner's bright laughter under Earth's sunlight fill him with sorrow. He wanted that same freedom, to choose his fate, his love, and to explore the universe without losing everything dear to him. "It's not strange at all," he whispers. They stand there in quiet companionship as the sun dips below the horizon. Below them, Lir'ava concludes her meeting. She turns her gaze upward, and the swirl of color in her eyes catches the reflection of the rising moon. Caleb notices how the rest of the tribe bows or lowers their heads when she passes, a mark of deep respect. As she approaches, he wonders how much it weighs on her, being not just a mother, but the leader of all these people. "We must be ready," she says, voice filled with a serene confidence that resonates in the open air. "The rival tribe has scouts not far from our borders. Our watchers have seen them crossing the singing river." Yeleth's jaw sets. "Then let me go out and meet them. I won't allow them to overstep." Lir'ava lifts her hand to still Yeleth's protest. "We will not provoke a battle unless they leave us no choice. Our first step is to strengthen our unity. They seek to exploit any sign of dissonance between us. They know you, child, and they know me. If they see us at odds, they will take advantage." Caleb senses the unspoken implication. The argument over who claims the first night with him could be precisely the dissonance the rival tribe wants to exploit. He rubs the back of his neck, feeling the tension in his muscles. No matter how advanced or different this alien world might be, the political undercurrents are all too reminiscent of human conflicts back home. He can't solve this with a snap of his fingers, but maybe there's something he can do. "Perhaps we can show them that I am with you, allied in peace," he suggests carefully. "I've charted frontiers on dozens of worlds. Maybe I can help identify a safe boundary, or negotiate some terms that keep both tribes from fighting." Lir'ava's expression is thoughtful. She steps closer, the faint swirling patterns on her jade-green skin seeming to shift in the moonlight. "You offer that with sincerity," she says, her tone quieter now. "I can sense it." He nods. "I've never wanted to see conflict for the sake of conflict. If there's a way to mediate—" A subtle tremor interrupts him, reverberating through the spire beneath their feet. The alien stone-like material underfoot gives a groan. Yeleth's eyes go wide for a moment, scanning the horizon. "Is that—" "A tremor from the deeper channels," Lir'ava confirms. "This region experiences them frequently when the planet breathes. We must descend. It is not safe to remain at the top of the spire when the earth shakes." They hurry to the ramp, following the gentle glow that pulses like molten veins in the walls. The motion intensifies and the corridor shudders. Caleb nearly loses his footing, but Yeleth steadies him with a firm grip at his elbow. The movement is surprisingly powerful for someone so lithe. He glances at her in gratitude, and she returns a fleeting smile before urging him onward. They pass into a central chamber built on a foundation of cross-hatched supports that Caleb suspects is designed to withstand the planet's seismic shifts. Others of the tribe stand there, some kneeling to keep their balance, others bracing themselves against the carved supports. Lir'ava directs them into a side alcove. The quaking intensifies. A few stones in the ceiling loosen, sending a trickle of dust into the chamber. Caleb's heart pounds as the memory of another quake surfaces, one from a mission where he lost a dear friend under falling rubble. He forces the memory down and focuses on reading the environment. He notices how the tremor pattern is cyclical, as though the planet has a heartbeat. He tries to steady his breath. "These quakes, can we predict them?" Lir'ava nods with a swift tilt of her head. "Somewhat. They are tied to the shifting plates beneath the singing river. We track them through certain crystals that hum before the quakes begin, but it is never entirely precise. The trembling eventually subsides, leaving behind an unsettled hush. Dust dances in the air. Caleb notices that the tribe members exchange glances of relief. Yeleth, leaning against a pillar, exhales. At least it was short this time. Lir'ava rests a hand on her daughter's shoulder. The moment of contact reveals a gentler aspect to their relationship, motherly concern overshadowing tension, if only for a fleeting instant. "Let us hope that is the worst of it for now," Lir'ava murmurs. "We must stay vigilant." Caleb wonders if the quake might stir up the rival tribe or shift their position. The planet's environment seems to connect everything: movement, light, life. He steadies himself and glances from Lir'ava to Yeleth, seeing in each a complexity that fascinates him. These two are more than mother and daughter, more than matron and inheritor. They represent two threads of an ancient tapestry, and he has been caught in that tapestry, no longer a mere onlooker, but woven into its very pattern. In the following hours, they regroup in the lower levels of the Spire, gathering with the clan's warriors and advisors. Caleb listens as Lir'ava's voice resonates, calm yet authoritative, laying out the plan to monitor the rival tribe's movements. Yeleth chimes in with insights about the forest routes, her knowledge gleaned from her own excursions. At times, they address Caleb for information on how he reads topographical signs or atmospheric data, gleaned from his experiences exploring uncharted worlds. He finds himself marveling at how fluidly the meeting runs despite the tension. The tribe members hold Lir'ava in reverence, but it isn't blind submission, more like a deep faith in her judgment. Meanwhile, Yeleth challenges and refines ideas without fear, even though her frustration over the night's earlier conversation still simmers beneath the surface. Eventually, as the planet's twin moons climb into the sky, the meeting disperses. The tribe members either retire to their living quarters or take up sentinel positions. Lir'ava approaches Caleb and Yeleth, quietly indicating they should follow her down an adjoining corridor. The walls here are carved with intricate scenes of her people's history, hunts, rituals, the building of their spires. The lighting is faint but comforting, emanating from channels in the stone that capture the day's light and release it slowly. They enter a spacious chamber that must be Lir'ava's private sanctum. It has an open sleeping area lined with silken mats that shimmer in the subdued glow. Shelves of smooth stone hold various objects, carved figures, perhaps relics or ceremonial tools. A wide window overlooks the forest canopy, where the silver-blue leaves ripple like waves under the moonlight. Lir'ava turns to them, her gaze serene but resolute. "We cannot put this off any longer," she says quietly. "The tribe expects me to secure our bond with the newcomer." She meets Caleb's eyes. "I will not force you. But if we do not perform the matron's blessing, the others will fear you are not truly allied with us. This fear might spark unrest at a critical moment. The rival tribe has spies, always watching. Even if you do not see them, they see you." Yeleth's fists clench. "But you make it sound so transactional. It doesn't have to be that way." Caleb feels their gazes on him, the push and pull of a culture's demands against personal desires. He thinks back to the vow he made after losing his partner, the vow never to let himself be emotionally entangled again. But he also recalls the quiet moments spent with Yeleth, the dignity in Lir'ava's leadership, the sense that there is more here than a simple ceremony. If he goes through with this, it might bring him closer to them both, forging a bond that is cultural, yes, but perhaps also deeply personal. He clears his throat, letting his hand drift to the swirling tattoo over his heart. "I won't pretend to fully understand your rituals," he says, voice hushed. "But I've seen enough to know this bond is more than just a superficial act. It's a responsibility. If it can keep the peace and protect us from outside threats, I'll consider it. But I need to know that this is more than a forced union. His breath hitches as he recalls the face of the one he lost. "I can't survive losing someone again if all of this is just a formality." Lir'ava steps closer, and the swirl-like patterns on her skin seem to flicker in the soft light. She raises a hand to his cheek. Her touch is as gentle as a whisper. "I understand. My role is burdened with duty, but I also feel the stirrings of something personal. You are not just an object to me, Caleb Hart. Yet I cannot ignore the weight of my people's expectations." Yeleth watches them, her expression torn between sadness and defiance. She steps up beside them. "Then let him decide, freely. If he chooses to perform the rite with you, Mother, so be it. But do not shut me out forever. We've bonded as well. We've risked our lives together. We share something that shouldn't be dismissed." Caleb looks from one woman to the other, the air thick with unspoken tension. In the hush of that moment, he becomes acutely aware of the warmth emanating from both of them, the subtle but distinct scents of their skin. Lir'ava's reminiscent of damp earth after a cool rain, Yeleth's carrying a brighter, almost floral undertone. His own heart throbs with a mixture of uncertainty and a deeper yearning than he wants to admit. He closes his eyes, letting the hush envelop him. Finally he speaks, voice trembling slightly. "We do this for peace, for unity, but also because we're not just strangers. There's something here. I don't want to deny that." He glances at Yeleth, seeing the flicker of hope in her amethyst gaze, then back to Lir'ava, who nods with solemn understanding. They approach the center of the sanctum, where a wide, low platform is set with plush coverings. Lir'ava extends her hands, one to Yeleth and one to Caleb, encouraging them to stand in a circle. She begins to intone soft words in her native tongue. The resonance of her voice echoes gently around them, a litany of phrases that speak of unity, acceptance, and the forging of a new path. Yeleth's expression is resigned but calm. She doesn't interrupt, though her eyes brim with conflicting emotions. Caleb tries to still his racing thoughts, allowing himself to remain present in this ritual. He has no illusions that it will simply solve all problems, but in a world so different from his own, perhaps there's value in trusting the ancient ways that have guided these people for generations. When Lir'ava finishes the chant, she turns to him, placing a hand on his chest, over the swirling lines of his tattoos. Her voice trembles just a fraction when she speaks. "By this act, we acknowledge you as part of our lineage. We bless your presence among us. We share breath and warmth, so no enemy shall part us without facing the wrath of our ancestors and our living kin." He mirrors her gesture, resting his hand against her chest, feeling the steady rise and fall of her breathing. Her heartbeat matches the planet's silent pulses, strong, determined. "I accept," he says, voice low, "but understand, I do this freely. I'm not a prisoner. I want to stand by your side, not behind you." A soft smile touches her lips, and the gold-crimson glow in her eyes deepens. "So it shall be," she says. As if guided by an unseen current, Lir'ava and Caleb's hands trail down each other's arms, their breaths mingling in the hush. The tension that has simmered between them begins to manifest as a palpable heat. He feels the press of her body against his, the fabric covering her shoulders sliding against his bare tattoos. For a moment, he glances at Yeleth, uncertain whether this is the moment that will relegate her to an onlooker or whether she will remain part of this connection. Yeleth shifts on her feet, eyes downcast. "I should give you the privacy of the first night. That is how it's done," she whispers, though there is a catch in her voice. She turns to leave, but Caleb reaches out, his fingers brushing hers. He doesn't quite know why he stops her. Perhaps it's the look in her eyes, the knowledge that she too has risked everything for him, or maybe he doesn't want her to slip away with the impression that she is an afterthought. But he knows that the ancient custom states Lir'ava shares the first bond, alone. To break that might cause problems. He hesitates, letting his hand linger on Yeleth's for just a breath. "We'll talk," he murmurs, voice tight with the swirl of too many feelings. "This doesn't change what's between us, or what could be." Yeleth offers a small nod, her lips parting as though to say something more, but she catches herself. She slips from his grasp, stepping backward toward the chamber's curtained entrance. Her eyes linger on him for a heartbeat longer before she disappears into the corridor. He realizes he is alone with Lir'ava now, and the gravity of this first night sinks in. They stand close, the hush broken only by their mingled breathing. She guides him to the low platform, the silken coverings cool against his bare feet. With a tentative grace, she slides her arms around him, pressing her body to his. Her skin is smooth, the faint patterns swirling under his fingertips as he dares to explore the shape of her shoulders, the dip of her waist. Her eyes close, and she tilts her head in that meditative gesture he has seen before, as though consulting something deep within. Then she opens them and meets his gaze. "Breathe with me," she whispers, and he does, inhaling slowly, exhaling in unison with her. There is an electric current in the air, the weight of possibility. His pulse stammers, recalling how not too long ago he promised himself never to become entangled in emotional closeness again. Yet here he stands, breath to breath with an alien matron whose presence stirs both desire and a sense of belonging he never anticipated. She brings her face close to his. Their lips meet, gentle at first, an exploration that gradually deepens as the urgency of the moment catches up with them. Her scent envelops him, reminiscent of wet stone after a soft rain, layered with a faint sweetness he can't quite name. He can feel her body, firm yet yielding against his own, responding to each subtle shift of his weight. He tries not to think too far ahead, focusing instead on the warmth of this moment. His hands roam carefully, mindful that he's stepping into her culture's sacred rite. She lets out a quiet sound of encouragement when his lips move to the sensitive ridge of her elongated ear. The swirl of color in her eyes seems to dance when she opens them again, her cheeks flushing a darker green. A resonant hum begins to fill the room, as though the chamber itself is responding to their union. He can feel it through the soles of his feet, a gentle vibration that sets the stones singing in sympathy. She notices his surprise and smiles against his lips, whispering that the structure amplifies the presence of passion and life. "This is how our ancestors built it," she says between breaths. "We become part of the living memory of these walls." Their breaths come faster. She guides his hand to a smooth, unadorned spot on her torso, where her swirl-like patterns meet. The warmth there intensifies, as though her very essence is calling to him. He arches closer, savoring the soft friction of skin on skin, the gentle tug of her clothing yielding beneath his touch. They sink to the silken mats, and the hush envelops them in a promise of shared vulnerability. She tastes of something faintly mineral and sweet, and he sinks deeper into her arms. His body reacts instinctively, an ache building inside him for connection, a longing to fuse them in a union that transcends the losses of his past. She senses his hesitation as memories prick at him, fear of losing another partner. Her hand slides up to cradle his cheek, her voice soft in the hush. "Let it go," she breathes. "Be here, with me, in this moment." He swallows hard, nods. Perhaps it is time to let the past live where it belongs, no matter how deeply it scarred him. If this union fosters peace and offers him a new beginning, then maybe it's worth risking his battered heart. Their lips meet again, gently at first, then with a rising intensity that resonates in every subtle shift of their bodies. She emits a delicate moan that vibrates against his mouth. His fingertips trace the line of her ribs, feeling the faint ridges in her skin as her breath catches. Her arms tighten around him, pulling him nearer. Her slender legs shift to accommodate his shape, entwining him in an unspoken invitation to share the most intimate of bonds. The hum in the room builds, a melodic undercurrent that matches the pounding of his heart. He loses track of time, drowning in the sensations of her touch, the slide of her body against his, the soft gasps and murmured words in her alien tongue. They move slowly, each movement a careful, exploratory dance, learning how their bodies speak to each other without need for a common language. The hush that grows between them is charged with a sense of wonder that he can scarcely contain. Soon, the longing grows insistent, pushing them to shed all remaining barriers. Their breaths come in ragged unison, and the chamber's resonance ripples through them both. They crest together in a wave of shared warmth, the tension between them unraveling into an intimate release that leaves them trembling in each other's arms. He feels lightheaded, overcome by a heady mix of relief and euphoria, and as he collapses against her, he senses the sureness of her heartbeat under his cheek. She holds him close for a long time, stroking his back in a gentle rhythm. He presses his lips against her neck, tasting the faint, salty tang of perspiration. The floor's pulse gradually subsides, as though satisfied by the culmination of their union. The hush in the room is now one of contentment rather than tension. He closes his eyes, letting the swirl of her presence lull him into a state of peaceful exhaustion. After some time, Lir'ava shifts, propping herself up on an elbow to regard him. The molten interplay of crimson and gold in her eyes glimmers with tenderness. "You have bound yourself to us," she says softly. "I will honor that bond. If you ever wish to leave, I won't imprison you. But I hope you will stay and see what our people have to offer beyond the tradition that brought you here." His throat feels tight with emotion. He knows this is only the beginning. Whether it be conflict with the rival tribe or the delicate dance between him, Lir'ava, and Yeleth, the path ahead is fraught. But for now, he manages a whisper. "I'll stay as long as you'll have me." They lie there, breathing in tandem, until the gentle hush of the night wraps them in a half-doze. At some point, Lir'ava guides him to rest fully against the cushions, covering him with a soft woven sheet that glints in the moonlight. He dreams of swirling forests, of a deep green ocean illuminated by hidden lights beneath its waves, and of a quiet promise that resonates in the stillness of his heart. When he finally stirs, he finds himself alone on the cushions, the scent of Lir'ava still lingering in the air. He sits up, rubbing his eyes, aware of how the room's soft radiance has changed. Dawn is near, judging by the cool blue haze that seeps through the window. Sliding to the edge of the platform, he finds his trousers folded neatly at its corner. He dresses quietly, noticing the steady hush beyond the chamber. His mind replays the events of the night in vivid detail, and he cannot help but feel an odd mix of serenity and worry. He wants to find Yeleth, to reassure her that she has not lost her place in his thoughts. Rising, he moves to the window, leaning against the cool stone as he gazes at the forest canopy. In the early light, the leaves glisten like brushed silver, and the trunks of the massive trees glimmer with hidden veins that reflect the shifting sky. He is so entranced by the beauty of it that he almost misses the soft footstep behind him. Turning, he sees Yeleth standing at the chamber's entrance. She regards him quietly, her arms folded across her chest. The faint, pearlescent sheen of her shoulders shifts with each of her breaths, though her eyes hold a mixture of uncertainty and curiosity. "May I come in?" she asks, her voice hushed, as though fearing she might disturb something fragile. He nods. "Of course. You don't have to ask." She steps forward, letting the curtain fall behind her. For a moment they stand in silence, the tension from the previous night still lingering. She glances at the cushions on the platform and then back at him. "So it's done," she says. Not quite a question. "The first night is complete. The tribe will be satisfied for now." He sees the shadow of a frown tug at her lips. "Yeleth," he says softly, stepping closer. "I can't pretend I know what you're feeling right now. But I want you to know, last night wasn't just about fulfilling tradition, it was something we both chose." She crosses her arms more tightly. "And what about me? What happens now? Do you just settle in with my mother? Do we pretend our moments together never happened?" He carefully lifts a hand, unsure if she'll accept his touch. When she doesn't move away, he lays it gently on her forearm. "I don't want to forget. I can't. Those moments we shared, how you guided me, how you saved me, they mean a lot." Her gaze flickers to his hand, then back to his face. "Sometimes I wonder if the bond between you and me should have been the one to seal your acceptance here. I didn't choose to step aside lightly, but I'm caught between respecting our tradition and my own heart." He breathes in the faint floral scent of her skin, letting his voice stay calm. "I don't claim to have a simple answer, but I know that in my culture a bond isn't always exclusive. I also know that what we have is genuine. We just need to figure out how it fits within your people's traditions. Or if it needs to fit at all. Maybe we can shape something new, together. Her posture relaxes a fraction. She glances down at his tattoos, then back up to meet his eyes. Slowly, she lifts her free hand to trace the lines swirling along his left shoulder. The gesture reminds him of how, during his anxious moments, he does the same to calm himself. The parallel strikes him. They each have their own ways of soothing the turmoil inside. "You're so different from us," she murmurs, "but perhaps we're not so different in what we want. Understanding, trust, acceptance." He exhales a shaky breath, letting the closeness of her body remind him of the magnetism he felt when they first met. He can practically taste her nearness, recalling how her hair shimmered in the forest sunlight as she drove away that beast. "I want to know you better," he says, voice barely above a whisper. "I want to know your hopes, your dreams, how you see the future here. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we can find a way to make that part of my future too." She seems almost on the verge of leaning in, but holds herself back. "You really mean that?" she says softly, her eyes searching his face. "You're not just trying to placate me." "I mean every word," he assures, letting his hands slide down her arm to clasp her fingers gently. The small contact sends a thrill through him. "I may have sealed a bond with your mother, but that doesn't negate what's already growing between you and me." A subtle flush colors her cheeks, her skin tone deepening from mint to a warmer olive shade. The faint shimmer of her pearlescent markings catches the morning light. She draws closer until he can feel the warmth of her breath on his lips. Her voice drops to a near whisper. "Then let me share with you something personal, a glimpse of who I am, separate from her." He parts his lips, and the hush around them seems to expand, enveloping them in a cocoon of unspoken anticipation. When their lips finally meet, it is softer, more hesitant than the urgent exchange he shared with Lir'ava. This is delicate, like two wandering souls finding a moment of solace in each other's presence. He feels her body tremble slightly against him, as though she too grapples with what this means. Her arms wrap around his waist, pulling him gently closer. He can feel her heart pounding in her chest, a quick flutter that mirrors the swirl of excitement and uncertainty in his own veins. When he deepens the kiss, she parts her lips and exhales in a shaky breath that seems to melt any lingering barrier between them. He can taste her sweetness, a subtle hint like fruit laced with the mineral essence of her world. They linger in that kiss, letting it build in gentle waves. He forgets for a moment about the complexities of the tribe, the threat of the rival clan, and even the quake-scarred planet. All that exists is the press of her lips, the brush of her delicate ears against his temples, the quiet hum of the Spire's living heartbeat echoing beneath the floor. Her hands slide up his back, fingertips tracing the lines of his tattoos. He realizes that she, too, is mapping him in her own way. A low sound escapes him, equal parts relief and longing, as he delves deeper into the taste of her mouth. The hush around them crackles with an undercurrent that could become a roar of desire if they let it. Yet after a few breathless moments, Yeleth pulls back. Their foreheads rest against each other as they catch their breath. She gazes into his eyes, her amethyst irises glowing with vulnerability. "I want to share more of myself with you," she murmurs, "but I also need to make peace with my mother. I can't be at war with her, and at the same time want to explore this with you." "Eh?" He nods slowly, heart pounding in his ears. "I understand. I don't want to cause a rift between you. She's your family, your matron. I respect that." She gives a small nod, though her eyes reflect a flicker of sadness. "I have to go speak with her. Will you wait for me? There's more I want to show you, something in the forest, if we have time." "Of course," he says, managing a faint smile. He watches as she slips out of the chamber, the curtains swaying in her wake. The hush that remains is thick with the aftermath of that tender moment. When he closes his eyes, he can still taste her lips. feel the warmth of her body pressed to his. He stands there for a long time, letting his heart settle. Eventually he forces himself to move. Though his mind lingers on Yeleth and Lir'ava, he knows the day must be met with purpose. He steps out into the corridor, finding a few tribe members stirring about in the early light. They greet him with polite nods, some more guarded than others. He can almost feel their curiosity, perhaps even some apprehension. A newly bonded outsider, a man from the stars. He recalls that Lir'ava said the rival tribe watchers were near. He wonders if it might be wise to scout the forest perimeter to understand the terrain better. He has traveled countless worlds, and on each, the environment held secrets that only patient observation could unveil. Maybe he can glean an advantage for Lir'ava's tribe if he charts the lay of the land more precisely. Before he can slip away, however, a tall figure steps into his path. The alien man's skin is a darker green than Lir'ava's, with layered striations that create the illusion of shifting stone under lamplight. He wears a simple garment tied at the waist, but across his shoulders is a harness holding a slender, curved blade. His expression is stoic. "You are the chosen mate of our matron." Caleb lifts his chin, though he tries not to appear confrontational. "I am Caleb Hart, yes. The bond was sealed last night." The man nods, his gaze cool but not hostile. "I am Calor. I serve as one of Lir'ava's protectors. We have watched you closely since your arrival. Some are uncertain of your presence. Others believe you will usher in a new era. I wonder which it will be." Caleb spreads his hands slightly. "I can't claim to know my destiny here, but I intend no harm. I've pledged to help this tribe if I can." Calor's lips twitch in something resembling a faint smile. "Words spoken easily. Let us hope you can back them with action. The rival tribe grows bolder each day. Be prepared. The bond you forged makes you their target as well." Caleb's stomach clenches. He recalls the predatory creature marked by the rival tribe, how its jaws nearly closed around him before Yeleth intervened. "I understand," he says. "I was about to go into the forest and survey the perimeter, get a sense of the terrain. Maybe that knowledge will help us anticipate their movements." Calor tilts his head in mild curiosity. "You would go alone?" "I'm used to working in unfamiliar territories. I'll be careful." The alien man nods, stepping aside. "Very well, but I would advise taking at least one scout. The forest can be treacherous, especially with the aftershocks from the quake." Caleb nods his thanks and continues down the corridor, eventually stepping out into the broad, columned entryway that leads outside. The day has fully arrived, with warm sunlight filtering through the swaying canopy. He breathes in the scent of damp earth and the faint, musky sweetness of the planet's flora. His head swims, with images of Yeleth's parted lips, Lir'ava's serene gaze, the tumult of feeling caught between them. Even as he sets foot on the winding path leading down from the spire, he feels the weight of the new bond he forged. He remembers how Lir'ava assured him she would not imprison him. But the unspoken reality is that he is entangled, for better or worse, in the tribe's fate. This is no longer just a mission of charting unknown lands. It has become personal, deeply so. The forest embraces him with a hush that is periodically broken by the calls of unseen creatures and the rustling of leaves. Sunlight splashes through openings in the canopy, illuminating patches of moss and lichen that sparkle like crushed jewels. He notes the topography, slight ridges, gullies carved by streams, clusters of broad, shimmering leaves that the tribe uses for weaving their garments. He makes quick sketches in a small data pad strapped to his belt, though it is battered from his earlier misadventures. Each time he moves deeper into the forest, he pays attention to changes in the environment, how the tree trunks shift color, how the air grows more humid near hidden water sources, how the soft ground occasionally emits a quiet hiss, as if exhaling. He suspects these are vents linked to the planet's internal geothermal activity. At one point, he discovers a narrow path where the ground has been deliberately cleared. At first, He thinks it might be the route the tribe uses for hunting or gathering, but then he notices the footprints, elongated three-toed impressions that are not from Lir'ava's people. A chill runs through him. This might be the rival tribe's infiltration route. He crouches down, studying the tracks. They are fresh, which means watchers have passed through recently, possibly even within the last few hours. The thought prickles the back of his neck. He realizes he is very much alone out here, armed only with a small blade and his own wits. Still, he continues his observation, moving quietly through the undergrowth, keeping his senses alert. After following the tracks for some distance, he hears voices carried on the gentle breeze. He crouches behind a large trunk, peering through the leaves. Two alien figures stand in a small clearing. Their skin is a pale, sickly yellow-green, and their markings differ from Lir'ava's tribe. The patterns on their shoulders look jagged, as if etched by knives rather than grown organically. They converse in low, guttural tones, occasionally glancing around as though expecting someone or something. Caleb's heart thumps. He can't make out all the words, but he catches a few that Yeleth once taught him. Matron, outsider, power. His instincts warn him to remain unseen. These watchers are presumably scouting the territory, perhaps looking for signs of weakness. He wonders if they know about Lir'ava's bond with him yet. That knowledge could change their strategy. Just then, the ground trembles with a smaller aftershock. It ripples through the clearing, sending the watchers stumbling slightly. One mutters something in an irritated tone, gesturing to the forest floor. Caleb uses the brief moment of distraction to slip away, weaving through the dense foliage until he can no longer hear their voices. Once he feels relatively safe, he relaxes behind a large, twisted root. His pulse hammers in his ears. The rival tribe's presence is real and immediate. He knows he has to warn Lir'ava and the others. But first, he should gather as much information as possible about how far the Watchers have infiltrated. With careful steps, he continues his search, mentally mapping the likely routes they might take to approach the Spire. He finds more footprints, carved marks on tree trunks that could be territorial signs. An uneasy sense of foreboding settles over him. He sees how close these Watchers are to the territory's heart. If they plan an attack or a stealth incursion, Lir'ava's tribe may not have much time to prepare. Suddenly, a twig snaps behind him. Before he can fully react, a sinewy figure lunges, brandishing a primitive blade with a jagged edge. Caleb twists to dodge, barely escaping the swipe aimed at his midsection. He scrambles backward, pulling his own small knife from his belt. His assailant is a member of the rival tribe. Pale, mottled skin, eyes set in a narrowed glare. The figure strikes again with surprising speed. Caleb deflects the blow, his blade clashing against the attacker's weapon in a dull thud. He tries to keep calm, remembering the self-defense drills from his pre-mission training. The attacker lunges, and Caleb sidesteps, attempting a counterstrike that grazes the alien's arm, drawing a thin line of dark, viscous blood. A guttural snarl escapes the attacker. He circles, eyes burning with hostility. Caleb's heart pounds in his chest. If one Watcher found him, there may be others nearby. He can't afford to be overwhelmed. He feints to the left, then rolls to the right, searching for an opening that will let him escape without pressing the fight too far. The attacker strikes once more aggressively this time. Caleb barely manages to parry. The force knocks him off balance, sending him stumbling over a tangle of roots. His breath hitches as he nearly loses his grip on his blade. The rival tribe member looms over him, weapon raised. Caleb's chest tightens with the prospect of being pinned here, in the forest, far from help. But his eyes catch movement in the foliage behind the attacker, a flash of sky-blue hair. Yeleth emerges, silent and fast, her slender hand gripping a spear tipped with a polished stone point. She leaps toward the attacker, striking in a fluid motion. The rival tribe member reels, crying out in surprise. Seizing the moment, Caleb regains his footing, pressing his advantage. As the attacker tries to fend off Yeleth's spear thrust, Caleb ducks beneath the blade and sweeps the alien's leg, sending him crashing to the forest floor. He points his knife at the attacker's throat, breathing heavily. The figure's eyes widen, flicking between him and Yeleth with a mixture of fear and rage. Yeleth hisses a warning. "If you value your life, run," she says in her native tongue, jabbing her spear dangerously close to the attacker's side. "Tell your tribe we will not be intimidated." The attacker hesitates, gaze darting from the weapon at his throat to the tension in Yeleth's stance. Then, with a spiteful glare, he twists away from Caleb's blade and scrambles to his feet. He disappears into the undergrowth, leaves rustling in his wake. Caleb exhales in relief, though adrenaline still surges through his veins. He glances at Yeleth, who lowers her spear, her shoulders heaving. She meets his eyes, and in that moment, 1,000 unspoken thoughts pass between them. Finally, she lets out a shaky breath. "I had a feeling you might come this way, alone. Not wise." He tries to catch his breath. "I needed to gather information. Didn't want to risk exposing a scout if they weren't stealthy." She scoffs, though her tone is light. Still reckless. Then she offers a small smile. "But you're alive, and that's what matters." He lets out a nervous laugh. "Thanks to you again." He wipes sweat from his brow, noticing how his hand trembles. The rush of almost being skewered still thrums in his chest. "I'm grateful you showed up." She glances back the way the attacker fled. "You're sure to have drawn attention now. We should return and warn my mother that the Watchers are closer than we realized, and that they're hostile enough to attack on sight." He nods, pushing down the swirl of anxiety. "Agreed. Let's go." They set off through the forest together, keeping to cover as much as possible. Yeleth leads confidently, her familiarity with the terrain evident in every lithe step. Caleb follows, occasionally pointing out signs of recent foot traffic or hidden markers the rival tribe might have left. Despite the danger, he can't ignore how being near her steadies him, the memory of her kiss still lingering on his lips. Once they reach the Spire's base, they pass the guards, who eye them with concern. Yeleth calls for an urgent gathering in the main hall, and soon Lir'ava, Caleb, and other key figures assemble. Caleb details what he discovered, the footprints, the Watchers, their boldness in attacking him. Yeleth confirms his account with her own observation of the ambush. Lir'ava's jaw tightens. "They grow more brazen each day. They must know we have bonded with an outsider and see it as either a threat or an invitation to strike before we consolidate power." Caleb nods. "This complicates matters. They might attempt a raid or try to destabilize us by capturing our new ally." Caleb straightens. "They won't catch me so easily." Yeleth glances at him, her amethyst eyes reflecting a hint of pride. "I can vouch for that." A subdued hush settles. Lir'ava squares her shoulders, letting the molten glow of her eyes sweep across those gathered. "We must decide how to respond. Do we prepare for defense, or do we attempt diplomacy?" Caleb steps forward. Diplomacy has never been fruitful with them. They see negotiation as weakness. They only respect strength. Yeleth lifts her chin. "Perhaps. But are we certain there is no other way?" An older advisor shakes his head. "We have tried to parley in the past. It led to betrayal and spilled blood. They believe in conquest." Caleb realizes that as an outsider, his input may or may not be welcomed, but he speaks nonetheless. "Sometimes, confrontation can be avoided by demonstrating that an attack would fail, that the cost would be too great for them. If we can show them we're prepared, it might deter them." Lir'ava nods thoughtfully. "We will strengthen our watch. Caleb assigns scouts to patrol the forest perimeter in pairs. If the rival tribe approaches, we will meet them with a show of strength. But I will not instigate a slaughter." Caleb bows his head, though he still looks uncertain. "Yes, matron." The gathering disperses to carry out tasks, leaving Lir'ava, Yeleth, and Caleb standing near the central pillar. Lir'ava's gaze flickers between them, noting the concern etched into their features. In the hush that follows, She steps forward, laying a hand gently on her daughter's shoulder. "Thank you for protecting him," she says, her voice quiet. Yeleth's eyes drop, her posture losing some of its tension. "I didn't do it for you," she mutters, but there is no malice in her tone. Then she glances at her mother, and a softer look passes between them. "But I'm glad he's safe." A small smile touches Lir'ava's lips. She shifts her gaze to Caleb. "You must be cautious. They know of you now. We will find a way to resolve this, but we cannot have you taken." He nods, though his mind wanders to the swirling thoughts of last night's bond and the tender moment with Yeleth. "I understand." Another subtle quake ripples through the ground, though less violently this time. They steady themselves, waiting for it to pass. Lir'ava's expression hardens with resolve. "We must keep watch on the deeper channels. If the land continues to shake, it could disrupt our structural supports. In the worst case, it could even alter the flow of the singing river, which we rely on for many things." Caleb recalls how Yeleth mentioned wanting to show him something in the forest. He wonders if now is the time, or if the encroaching threat of the rival tribe makes it too dangerous. But a glance at Yeleth's determined expression suggests she still wants to share whatever it is that has been on her mind. When Lir'ava departs to organize more defenses, Yeleth turns to Caleb, her voice just above a whisper. "I need to show you a place," she says. "It's important to me, but we must be discreet. If my mother or Kalor knew we were venturing deeper into the forest again, they'd insist on a guard." He arches an eyebrow. "Considering we were just ambushed, you sure that's wise?" She hesitates, then nods. "We'll be careful. If we move swiftly and quietly, we can reach it without drawing attention. It's a place that means a lot to me, a place I go when I need clarity. If I'm going to face all these expectations, my mother's, the tribe's, and my own, I need that clarity now more than ever." Despite the tension, he can't help feeling a surge of curiosity. Perhaps this place of hers will also offer him some peace amid the chaos. "Then let's go," he says. They slip away from the main hall, weaving through the Spire's corridors until they reach a smaller exit on the eastern side. From there, they enter the forest, staying close to the thick trunks and shadowed groves. Yeleth moves with the grace of someone who has spent her entire life navigating these paths. Even though he prides himself on being a seasoned explorer, Caleb finds himself marveling at how effortlessly she blends into her environment. Every so often, she raises a hand, gesturing for him to stop and remain silent. They wait, listening for any sign of watchers or hostile creatures. The forest is alive with subtle sounds, chirping from avian-like beings flitting among the branches, the soft brush of wind through layers of large, shimmering foliage, the distant crackling of underbrush as small animals scurry. After nearly an hour of cautious travel, they come upon a hidden glade. Tall, translucent formations rise from the earth like pillars of glass, capturing the sunlight and refracting it into delicate prisms that dance across the mossy ground. A gentle stream winds through the center, its waters so clear that the white stones lining the bottom seem to glow. The place is almost surreal in its beauty, an oasis of radiant quiet. Yeleth kneels beside the stream, motioning for Caleb to join her. When he does, he sees that the water carries specks of luminous algae, though these are much more subtle and faint than the typical glowing phenomena he's encountered on other worlds. Here, it's more like tiny motes of light drifting lazily downstream, winking in and out of visibility. "This is my sanctuary," Yeleth whispers, dipping her fingers into the water. "When I was younger, I'd come here to escape the burden of expectations. My mother always told me that as her daughter, I'd have to grow strong, that one day I might lead. But I didn't want to think about that. I just wanted to be free. So I found this place and made it my own." He gazes around, enthralled by the play of colored light dancing on her face. "It's incredible," he breathes. A gentle smile curves her lips. She reaches into a small satchel at her side, pulling out an intricately carved stone that glints in the scattered sunlight. "This belonged to my father," she says quietly. "I never knew him. My mother doesn't speak of him much, but I found this in our home when I was old enough to be curious. I think he gave it to her before he—" She trails off, brushing her thumb over the stone's surface. Caleb lays a hand on her arm. "I'm sorry." She shakes her head, exhaling softly. "It's all right. It happened before I was born, but sometimes I feel his presence, especially here, like this is where he watches over me." He notices tears glistening in her amethyst eyes. "You've carried that loss with you." She nods, brushing away a tear with the back of her hand. "My mother says she loved him deeply, that he was not from our tribe, but from a distant settlement. He died defending us from an incursion. Sometimes I wonder if she clings to tradition so strongly because she's afraid of losing more. Maybe she thinks controlling every aspect of bonding and ritual is the only way to keep us safe." Caleb can't help thinking of his own loss, of the partner he watched slip away beneath the twisted wreckage on Fira. He closes his eyes, allowing the hush of the glade to comfort him. "I understand what it's like to lose someone you love," he says softly. "I know that fear, the fear of letting anyone close again." She lays the carved stone gently on the moss and turns to him, her eyes reflecting the watery light. "And now here we are. You bonded with my mother, and I'm left wondering if I'll ever have a place in your life." He reaches for her hand, holding it firmly. "You're already in my life. From the moment you saved me in the forest, we forged a connection I can't ignore. Whether or not that fits into your customs or mine, it's real." Her lips tremble. "I feel it too. But that doesn't mean it's simple." His gaze shifts to the glimmering water. "No, it's not simple at all." Then he lifts his eyes to meet hers. "But maybe we can figure it out. Tell me, what do you want, Yeleth? Not what your mother wants, not what the tribe wants. You." She hesitates, her cheeks flushing. "I want to learn more of who I can be. I've only known this tribe, these rules, this forest, but you talk about stars and traveling to distant worlds. My heart yearns to see beyond these boundaries." She pauses, her hand tightening on his. "I also can't deny my desire for you, for something more than stolen moments." His pulse quickens. He leans in, brushing a stray strand of her sky-blue hair from her forehead. "I won't promise a fairy tale, but I'll promise that whatever path I take, I want you beside me. We'll figure out how to honor your mother's bond and this strange new place I've found with you. Maybe it won't fit any rule perfectly, but—" She silences him with a kiss, urgent yet tender. He yields, letting the warmth of her lips and the press of her body speak the words they can't quite find. He wraps his arms around her waist, pulling her close until he can feel her heartbeat thrumming against his ribs. Her breath catches when his hand slides up the curve of her back. They shift against the moss, half kneeling, half leaning into each other, letting the hush of the glade enclose them in a bubble of shared vulnerability. Each brush of skin against skin, each gentle tug at clothing, feels like a promise. The tension that has been growing between them finds its release in a flurry of warm sighs and soft moans. She guides his hands to the edges of her garments, her eyes fluttering shut with anticipation. The sunlight dances over their interlaced bodies, reflecting off the pillars of translucent rock, casting a kaleidoscope of gentle color across their skin. When his lips trace the line of her jaw, down the column of her neck, she tilts her head back, allowing him full access. Her slender fingers tangle in his hair, urging him closer. He can feel the rapid rise and fall of her chest, the subtle trembling in her limbs. The environment itself seems to respond, the water's faint, luminous motes intensifying slightly, as if the current is stirring with their mingled heat. He slides a hand down the small of her back, drawing a quiet gasp from her. Their kisses deepen, tongues finding a mutual rhythm that weaves them into a single, urgent breath. When they sink onto the moss, his body half covering hers, time blurs. He wants to be tender, to explore her curves with unhurried reverence. She matches his pace, letting her hands roam over the taut muscles of his arms, the swirling tattoos that mark his torso, tracing them with a curiosity that betrays both fascination and yearning. They shed the remaining barriers between them, the hush of the forest broken only by the soft cadence of their passionate exhalations. Their bodies move with a shared desire that grows bolder each passing moment, the friction of skin igniting a flame that quickly rages out of control. She clings to him, nails gently raking his back, when a surge of pleasure sends her reeling. He presses closer, claiming her mouth in a searing kiss that merges their gasps, their vulnerability, their unstoppable hunger for each other. The climax builds swiftly. Every thought of custom, danger, or rival tribe fades, replaced by the electric bond forging between them. In a moment of exquisite release, they arch together, stifling cries against each other's lips. A pulsing wave seems to run through the glade. He can almost feel the planet's subtle breath responding to the intensity of their union, as if acknowledging this quiet explosion of life and longing. Afterward, they lie tangled on the moss, chest to chest, letting the afterglow settle. She runs her fingers through his short hair, her eyes half-lidded with contentment. "I've never felt such intensity," she murmurs, voice quivering slightly. He exhales, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Me neither." A comfortable silence follows. He can't help but marvel at the prismatic lights dancing on her mint-green skin, the subdued flush across her cheeks, the way her pearlescent markings shift in time with her slowing heartbeat. He threads his fingers with hers, his chest still tight with a swirl of emotion, but gradually the realization of their vulnerability returns. They are out in the open, with watchers potentially lurking. He props himself up, brushing back a tendril of her hair. "We should go. We can't stay here indefinitely." She nods with a resigned sigh, pressing one last soft kiss to his lips. They dress quickly, exchanging shy glances that carry the warmth of what just happened. Once clothed, Yeleth picks up the carved stone she set aside earlier. She holds it to her chest for a moment before tucking it away in her satchel. "Thank you," she says, voice quieter now. "I needed this, to feel hope, to feel like something is my choice." He embraces her gently, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I'm with you in this. Whatever comes next, we face it together." She nods against him, then leads the way back through the forest. Their steps are more cautious now, the memory of the ambush fresh. The mood between them is not exactly subdued, but it carries a deeper awareness of what they have to lose. They know that forging a bond in the midst of a looming conflict is risky, but it is also what they both crave, an authentic connection that transcends the shackles of tradition or fear. By the time they near the spire again, dusk approaches, painting the sky in swirls of fiery orange and pale lavender. The tribe members are busy setting up perimeter defenses, tying rope-like vines around thick posts, sharpening blades of carved stone. Lir'ava stands near the entrance, conversing with Caleb and another guard. When she sees Caleb and Yeleth approach, her eyes narrow slightly, as though she's deducing where they've been. She sends Caleb away to continue his tasks, then waits for them in the grand corridor. The hush is weighted with tension as they step inside. Lir'ava's gaze slides over her daughter, taking in the faint blush on her cheeks, the disheveled hair. Then her attention shifts to Caleb, who meets her eyes with quiet resolve. Yeleth is the one who breaks the silence. "We went to gather clarity, Mother. I needed to settle my thoughts before the confrontation that may come." Lir'ava folds her arms, her jade-green skin catching the last glow of the day. "You risked your safety by venturing out, especially after the ambush." Yeleth sets her jaw. "I'm not a child. I know the dangers." Lir'ava's gaze flicks momentarily to Caleb, and he sees a flash of emotion there. Perhaps jealousy, perhaps worry, but her tone remains measured. "And what clarity did you find?" Yeleth hesitates, then lifts her chin. "That I am not content to be merely the matron's daughter, waiting in the wings. I have found my own path in how I choose to bond, and I won't pretend that it doesn't exist. The hush that follows is palpable. Lir'ava regards them both for a tense moment, the interplay of crimson and gold in her eyes, reflecting something akin to conflict. Finally, she exhales, her shoulders lowering. I sense you speak the truth. This will be difficult for the tribe to accept. They are used to a clear lineage, a single bond, but perhaps it is time we adapt. She steps closer, looking between the two of them. I will not deny my own bond with you, Caleb. But if my daughter's heart also lies with you, then we must find a way to honor that. We cannot face the threat of the rival tribe divided. Relief floods Caleb. He realizes how precarious their situation is, how easily Lir'ava could have hardened her stance. He bows his head in respect. Thank you. I want to stand with both of you with this tribe. Whatever shape that takes, I vow to protect you. Lir'ava's expression softens. She lifts a hand to his cheek, a gesture so reminiscent of the intimacy they shared that it sends a shiver through him. And we will protect you in return. You are part of us now. A thunderous crash echoes through the corridor, shattering the relative calm. The ground rumbles, more violently than before. They stagger, clinging to one another for balance. A panicked cry arises from outside, followed by the trample of running feet. Lir'ava motions sharply for them to follow as she hurries toward the main hall. When they emerge onto the Spire's outer platforms, they see the largest quake yet rolling through the landscape. Trees sway precariously, some even toppling as the earth splits in jagged lines. The singing river in the distance churns furiously, its waters twisting in wild eddies. The trembling intensifies, forcing them to cling to the carved stone supports to avoid being thrown off their feet. A series of sharp cracks reverberate above. Caleb looks up to see portions of the spire's upper architecture fracturing, sending chunks of carved stone tumbling. Tribe members cry out, scrambling to safety. Dust clouds the air, choking them. Lir'ava shouts commands, her voice raw with urgency. Kelor and other guards hurry to shield the vulnerable, but chaos reigns. Suddenly, from the tree line, a group of pale-skinned figures bursts forth, brandishing crude but vicious weapons. The rival tribe has seized the moment of seismic chaos to launch an assault. Their war cries pierce the tumult, followed by the clash of blades against stone. The defenders rush to form a line, but the quake rattles them, making it impossible to maintain formation. Caleb sees a handful of the invaders scaling the broken edges of the spire, heading toward a path that leads to the heart of the structure. Likely they aim to seize Lir'ava or secure hostages. He shares a quick, determined look with Yeleth, then dashes forward, weaving between falling debris and jostled warriors. The quake throws him off balance, nearly pitching him to the ground. He clenches his teeth, forcing himself to stay upright. Yeleth is right behind him, spear in hand. They intercept two invaders on the stairwell. The first lunges at Caleb, who parries with his short blade, feeling the impact jolt his arm. He steps into the attack, hooking the alien's leg and sending him sprawling down the steps. The second attacker moves to strike Yeleth, but she's too quick. She spins gracefully, spear humming through the dust-laden air. The blade plunges into the attacker's shoulder, drawing a pained grunt. Blood spatters across the carved stone steps as Yeleth yanks her weapon free, her eyes bright with fierce determination. They push on, heading for the upper platform, where they catch a glimpse of Lir'ava engaged in combat with two more rival warriors. Her fluid movements remind Caleb of a dancer. Each parry, each dodge, perfectly timed. Yet he sees the flicker of strain in her expression. The ground continues to rumble, making every step a gamble. Stone cracks and dust clouds swirl. A sharp bark from behind draws his attention. Another enemy charges, blade raised high. Caleb barely deflects the blow, the alien steel scraping across his forearm. Pain blossoms, warm and pulsing. He bites back a cry, driving his shoulder into the attacker's chest. They tumble across the platform in a tangle of limbs, dangerously close to the edge. Stones crumble away, leaving a dizzying drop beneath them. The attacker, snarling, tries to push Caleb over the ledge. Caleb grips the alien's wrist, straining to hold the blade at bay. A hot spurt of blood seeps from the wound on his forearm, weakening him. Desperation surges. If he loses his grip, he'll plunge to his death. In a burst of adrenaline, he twists the attacker's arm, forcing the weapon free. The blade clatters over the edge, vanishing into the swirling dust below. Summoning a final surge of strength, Caleb drives a knee into the attacker's abdomen. The rival warrior lurches, teetering off balance. Caleb wrenches free, landing a sharp kick that sends the figure tumbling over the crumbling ledge with a fading shriek. He drags himself away from the edge, gasping, the quake still rattling his bones. Yeleth rushes to his side, eyes wide with worry. "You're hurt." He glances down at the gash on his forearm, teeth bared against the pain. "Just a scratch," he manages, though it's deeper than he'd like. Still, there's no time to rest. They hear Lir'ava cry out from the far side of the platform. She stands, cornered by two more enemy warriors who have pinned her near a fractured pillar. Her chest rises and falls, her expression resolute but grim. One warrior lunges, and Lir'ava narrowly dodges, though the quake nearly throws her off her feet. The second closes in for a killing strike. Yeleth doesn't hesitate. She dashes forward, spear at the ready. Caleb scrambles to follow, ignoring the throb in his arm. Lir'ava sees them coming and tries to create an opening. She ducks under the warrior's blade, driving a knee into his side. The rival grunts, staggering back, but the second attacker seizes the moment, swinging a weapon toward Lir'ava's unprotected flank. Yeleth's spear intercepts the blow with a loud clang. Sparks fly. Her slender frame trembles under the force, but she holds firm. Lir'ava exhales in relief, launching a swift counterattack that lands a heavy strike on the attacker's wrist. The weapon clatters to the floor, and the quake shifts the stone beneath it, sending it skittering off the ledge. The other rival warrior recovers, readying his blade for another strike. But Caleb leaps in, ignoring the agony in his arm. He grapples the warrior from behind, locking an arm around his neck. They struggle violently, footsteps sliding on the shaking platform. With a mighty heave, Caleb throws the warrior against the fractured pillar. The alien slumps, momentarily dazed. Seizing the chance, Lir'ava plants her foot and drives her own blade into the attacker's chest, a swift, merciful blow that ends the threat. The final rival warrior tries to flee, but Yeleth springs forward, spear tip leveling at his throat. He raises his hands in surrender, eyes darting with desperation. The quake finally subsides to tremors, leaving the battlefield thick with dust and the groans of the wounded. Caleb, Lir'ava, and Yeleth share a relieved look, though there's little time to celebrate. Lir'ava presses a hand to the wound on Caleb's arm, her face tight with concern. "You're bleeding heavily." He nods, breath labored. "I'll be fine. Just need a bandage." Yeleth tears a strip from her clothing, binding his wound as best she can. "We need to get him inside." But Lir'ava glances at the scene below, where tribe members have driven off the rival incursion. This is not over yet. They've retreated, but they might regroup. And the quake has done terrible damage to our spire. People are hurt. Caleb tries to stand on steady legs. "Then let's help," he says. "My wound can wait until we make sure everyone is safe." Together they descend the battered stairs, picking their way through rubble. The spire has lost entire sections, some pillars collapsed, blocking corridors. Tribe members work frantically to clear debris, checking for survivors. The rival tribes' dead or wounded lie, scattered among the carnage, while the living have pulled back to the forest's edge. A day that began in uncertainty has plunged into crisis. Yet in the midst of this devastation, a deeper sense of unity emerges. Lir'ava, Yeleth, and Caleb move among the injured, offering aid and reassurance. Caleb directs able-bodied warriors to shore up weak points in the spire's structure. Despite the swirling dust and the tang of blood in the air, the tribe pulls together, forging a shared resolve to survive. Night falls with an eerie slowness, the planet's two moons rising over a landscape altered by the quake. A hush of exhaustion settles over the spire, broken only by the moans of the wounded and the quiet orders of those tending them. Lir'ava, her face streaked with dust, gathers the uninjured in the largest intact hall to regroup and plan for the immediate future. Yeleth supports Caleb, who is pale from blood loss but still conscious. They sit in a circle, joined by Caleb and several other key figures. Lir'ava begins to speak in a voice that carries the weight of authority. "We have withstood their incursion, but our losses are not light. The quake ravaged our spire, and the rival tribe will doubtless try again. We must fortify ourselves, but we also must consider evacuation if the structure is compromised beyond repair." Murmurs ripple through the group. Some want to stand and fight, others advocate retreat to safer ground. Caleb interjects, wincing as Yeleth tightens the bandage on his arm. "We can't just abandon this place without a plan. Are there known shelters or other spires we can move to?" An older tribe member with deep-set eyes nods. "There is the Canyon of Echoes, where a series of natural stone arches can provide shelter. But it is far, and the path is treacherous." Another warrior counters, "We lose more than just a home if we leave. This spire is our cultural heart, the seat of the matron's line. If we abandon it, we might never reclaim it." Caleb folds his arms, glancing at Lir'ava. "We must also consider the next quake. If one as large as this hits while we are still here, the entire spire may collapse." Lir'ava's eyes flick to Caleb. "You have knowledge of many worlds, of the land's shifting nature. Can you help us predict if another quake will strike soon?" Caleb exhales, trying to calm the pounding in his temples. "I'm no seismologist, but from the patterns I've observed, these quakes come in clusters. A major one might be followed by smaller aftershocks, or another major one if the tectonic stress isn't fully released. I can examine the ground near the singing river, maybe place a makeshift sensor, but I can't promise a precise forecast." Lir'ava nods. "Do what you can. If we must relocate, we'll gather what resources we can carry. The rest we'll have to leave behind." A collective sigh seems to shake the hall. The tribe looks to Lir'ava for guidance, but it's clear she feels the burden of her leadership. Caleb notices the lines of exhaustion under her eyes. She spares a glance at Yeleth, then at him, a silent question hanging between them. "Can we hold it together?" Yeleth stands, drawing herself up with a resolve Caleb has rarely seen. "I'll take a small party to scout the path to the Canyon of Echoes. If it's passable, we'll prepare to guide the tribe there. If not, we'll find another solution." She glances at her mother, who gives a solemn nod. Caleb lifts his injured arm, grimacing. "I'd go, but—" "You need rest," Yeleth interrupts, her tone firm but gentle. "We almost lost you out there. Let the wound heal. We'll need your mind sharp to figure out how to handle these quakes." He can't argue with her logic, though it frustrates him to remain behind. Still, exhaustion tugs at him. Between the fight, the blood loss, and the emotional whirlwind, his body is near its limit. He nods, relenting. "Be careful out there." She offers him a faint smile, then turns on her heel, gathering 2 warriors to accompany her. Caleb watches until she disappears down the corridor. Lir'ava rests a hand on his good shoulder, guiding him to a secluded alcove where a few healers tend to the wounded. A tall, slender female with lavender markings on her arms examines his arm, applying a paste that numbs the pain. He breathes a sigh of relief. Lir'ava stands by, her gaze heavy with concern. "You have done enough for one day," she says. "Rest, please." He glances up at her, recalling the intimacy they shared not so long ago. It feels distant now, overshadowed by blood and dust. Yet the bond remains, a silent vow they made. "What about you?" she exhales. "I have to oversee repairs, organize the guard rotations, and ensure the wounded are cared for. My rest must wait." He reaches out, gingerly taking her hand. "Don't push yourself to the brink. We need you strong." She nods, her thumb brushing over his knuckles in a fleeting moment of tenderness. Then, releasing his hand, she steps away, returning to the main hall. The healer finishes, dressing his arm, instructing him to keep it still. Exhaustion drags at his eyelids. He finds a corner of the room where cushions are piled and sinks down onto them. The hush of the wounded around him, the occasional whimper or moan, lulls him into a troubled sleep. In his dreams, he sees glimpses of a world at peace. The spire whole, the forest undisturbed. Lir'ava smiling beside him. Yeleth gazing into his eyes under the shimmering pillars in the glade. But then the quake returns, fracturing everything into darkness. He jolts awake, cold sweat on his brow, his arm throbbing. Sitting up, he notices the sky outside has darkened further, the moon's high. The wounded around him are mostly asleep, with a few healers still bustling softly. He stands carefully, wincing at the ache in his muscles. Despite the healer's orders to rest, he can't stay idle. He has to do something to help. He slips out of the alcove, navigating the spire's damaged corridors. Loose stones litter the floor, and cracks run through walls. Eventually, he finds a vantage point on a lower balcony overlooking the forest. The rival tribe seems to have retreated entirely, but the memory of their assault lingers. He wonders how Yeleth fares in her scouting mission, if she's safe. A faint footstep behind him startles him. Turning, he sees Lir'ava approaching, her features etched with fatigue. She stops beside him, gazing out over the moonlit trees. "You should be resting," she says, though her voice holds no reproach. He shrugs gently, mindful of his arm. "I couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts." She nods, quiet for a moment. "We lost many good people today. Yet it could have been worse. Your actions saved lives." His chest tightens. It feels like chaos. "I'm just trying to keep up. I'm sorry for any burden I've brought. If not for me, would the rival tribe have attacked so soon?" She shakes her head, a shadow crossing her eyes. "They would have come eventually. This quake gave them an opening. You are not to blame." Her gaze drifts to his bandaged arm. "Does it hurt?" He attempts a small, reassuring smile. "A little, but the healer's paste is working." She reaches out, resting a hand gently above his bandage. Warmth radiates from her touch, and he swallows the sudden lump in his throat. Memories of their intimate night flood back, clashing with the heartbreak he's witnessed since then. She moves closer, her jade-green skin catching the silvery glow of the moon, highlighting the swirl-like patterns that seem to shift faintly with her breathing. "Look at what has befallen us," she whispers, eyes glistening. "And still, you remain here, a pillar I never expected." He shifts his weight, noticing how her nearness makes his heart thunder. "I told you, I'm not leaving, not unless I have no other choice. I want to help protect this place, be part of it." Her lips part, a tremor passing through her. She brushes a stray lock of cerulean hair behind her ear, and for the first time he notices lines of tension etched at the corners of her eyes, signs of the overwhelming strain she carries as matron. Without overthinking, he slides his good arm around her waist, drawing her against his side. She closes her eyes, leaning into him, letting out a shaky breath that speaks volumes of her pent-up worry. For a moment, they stand in silence, finding solace in each other's presence. He feels the subtle trembling in her body, as if she's fighting not to break. Gently, he presses his lips to her temple. She tilts her face upward, and their gazes lock. The hush envelops them, and he sees in her eyes the loneliness of a leader, a mother, and a lover all rolled into one. She lifts a hand to cup his cheek, drawing him down into a kiss that is soft, searching, laden with the unspoken confessions of two souls battered by the day's events. He returns the kiss, letting it linger, tasting salt that might be her tears or perhaps his own. For a fleeting instant, the world falls away, leaving them entwined in shared need. Yet they do not let the moment spiral into unchecked desire. Not now. Practical reality tugs them back. She breaks the kiss, resting her forehead against his. "I must check on the watch rotations. There's so much to do." He nods, voice husky with emotion. "I know. I'll see if there's any way I can help with structural repairs, or maybe gather data to predict another quake." She steps back, though her hand lingers on his chest. Yes, do that, and rest when you can. Her eyes linger on him, the swirl of color reflecting gratitude, a flicker of longing, and something deeper. Then she leaves, her footsteps echoing in the damaged corridor. He remains at the balcony's edge, letting the night's chill wash over him. The interplay of feelings in his chest is almost too much to bear. The budding love for both mother and daughter, the guilt of not knowing if he can satisfy either, the overshadowing threat of the rival tribe, the unstable planet beneath his feet. Yet even amid this storm of uncertainties, he feels oddly alive, a sense of purpose that has eluded him for so long. Eventually, he forces himself to return to the alcove, where he dozes fitfully until dawn breaks. The new day is a flurry of activity. Yeleth returns with her scouting party, exhausted but triumphant. They found a safe route through the forest's ravines to the Canyon of Echoes, a journey of at least 2 days on foot, complicated by fallen trees and unstable ground. Lir'ava calls another council, and they debate whether to relocate permanently or remain to rebuild. Voices rise in heated argument. Before a decision can be reached, a scout rushes in, breathless, reporting that the rival tribe has been spotted near the Singing River. But they aren't massing for an attack. They appear to be harnessing a large creature, perhaps to break through the Spire's defenses more directly. Anxiety ripples through the gathered tribe. Time is short. Yeleth stands, her eyes shining with determination. We should strike first while they're distracted, destroy whatever they're building before they can bring it here. Caleb rubs his chin. A bold plan, risky. Caleb, adjusting the fresh bandage on his arm, nods. Sometimes the best defense is a preemptive move. Lir'ava looks between them, torn. If we fail, we weaken ourselves further. But if we succeed, the rival tribe might be demoralized, giving us time to move to the canyon if we must. Caleb steps forward. I'll lead the warriors. Yeleth shakes her head. I'll go. I know the forest route better. Caleb looks at Lir'ava, volunteering with his eyes. She hesitates, scanning the bandage on his arm. Are you certain you're up for this? He sets his jaw. I can fight, and we'll need every skill we have. She exhales but nods. Very well. Go. Strike swiftly and return before dusk. We can't risk an extended battle. Thus, a small warband forms, including Yeleth, Caleb, and a handful of experienced fighters. They depart at once, slipping into the forest with weapons at the ready. Yeleth leads them along a route that skirts the thickest underbrush, careful to avoid areas where the quake has left the terrain too unstable. As they draw near the Singing River, the distant roar of water grows, accompanied by an odd, rhythmic thumping. They crouch behind a screen of tangled vines and peer out at the banks. A massive, lumbering beast stands there, pale hide crisscrossed with harnesses. Several rival tribe members are busy attaching large spikes to the beast's armor plating, presumably to smash through the spire's walls. A sense of dread coils in Caleb's gut at the sight of the monstrous creature. It resembles a cross between an armored rhinoceros and a thick-skulled reptile, with a broad forehead crowned by jagged horns. The rival warriors move around it with frantic purpose, hammering, tying ropes, preparing for a siege. If they bring that creature to the spire, it could cause devastation, especially in its compromised state. Caleb signals the group to fan out, each warrior taking position behind rocks and fallen logs. Yeleth shares a look with Caleb, a silent question, a hope that this plan will work. He offers a brief nod, gripping his blade tightly. At Caleb's signal, they spring into action. One warrior hurls a spear that catches an enemy by surprise, while others charge to engage at close range. The clearing explodes into chaos. The rival tribe scrambles to defend themselves, but they are caught off guard. Caleb rushes forward, ignoring the protest of his injured arm, his adrenaline fueling each step. He needs to disable the harnesses controlling that beast. If it runs wild or flees, it won't be used against the spire. He ducks a swinging blade from a rival warrior, then slams his shoulder into the attacker, knocking them aside. Another slashes at him, cutting a shallow groove across his upper arm. He bites back a cry, pressing on. Yeleth and Caleb work in tandem, cutting down enemies that attempt to rally. The thunderous roar of the beast rattles the air as it senses the chaos around it. It thrashes, nearly trampling a handler who leaps aside in terror. Caleb seizes the moment, lunging toward the harness. He slashes at the straps with his blade, severing thick ropes. One harness piece falls away, sending a metal plate clattering to the ground. An infuriated rival warrior charges, hoping to intercept him, but Yeleth intervenes with a swift spear thrust. Blood arcs in the air, and the warrior collapses. Caleb spares her a grateful glance, then hacks at the final straps. The beast, now freed from the controlling harness, bellows a deep, resonant cry. It stomps in confusion, lashing its tail. One rival handler tries to subdue it, only to be flung aside like a rag doll. The tide of battle swings in favor of Lir'ava's warband. The rival tribe, disorganized and desperate, begins to break. Some flee across the rocky banks, others scramble to avoid the rampaging beast. Kello's roar galvanizes the tribe's warriors to press their advantage. Within minutes, the clearing is littered with the fallen, and the survivors of the rival tribe retreat into the dense undergrowth. A triumphant cheer rises from the warband, though it's tinged with exhaustion. The beast, no longer tethered, stomps toward the river, letting out an agitated huff. With a final splash, it wades into the shallows and then lumbers downstream, as if eager to escape the tumult. Caleb breathes hard, leaning on a boulder to steady himself. Blood drips from the gash on his arm, his muscles burning. Yeleth rushes over, eyes scanning his wounds with alarm. "You're worse off than before." He grits his teeth. "I'll live. We have to get back quickly before they regroup." Kelor agrees, organizing the warriors to collect any salvageable weapons and to finish off the harness. They toss the splintered remains into the river. Without the harness, it would take a long time for the rival tribe to prepare another such beast. The group sets off on the return journey, battered but victorious. By the time they reach the Spire, darkness is closing in. They are greeted by relieved tribe members who rush to tend their injuries. Lir'ava stands at the entrance, and when she sees Yeleth and Caleb alive, relief floods her face. She moves to embrace them both, though the gesture is as much to hold them upright as it is an expression of joy. Word quickly spreads of the victory. The tribe gathers in the main hall, battered yet hopeful. Lir'ava, her voice strong despite her tired eyes, addresses them. "We have dealt a significant blow to the rival tribe. Their siege beast is lost to them, and we have broken their immediate threat. However, our Spire remains unstable. We must decide our path forward." A murmur travels through the crowd. The older advisor who once argued against leaving approaches, bowing his head. "Matron, it may be wise to relocate while we have the chance. Our hearts remain here, but so do the dangers." Lir'ava's gaze sweeps over her people, finally settling on Caleb and Yeleth. She steps forward, her tone resonant. "Our home stands on quaking ground, but our lineage, our bonds, and our spirit go wherever we go. We will journey to the Canyon of Echoes at dawn. This spire may fall, but we will endure." A mix of sadness and determination colors the tribe's response. Preparations begin immediately. That night is a flurry of gathering provisions, loading them onto pack animals, and organizing caravans. Caleb, his arm wrapped tightly, helps as best he can, guided by Yeleth's instructions. Lir'ava busies herself with ensuring no one is left behind. As dawn's first light stains the sky, the tribe forms a somber procession at the base of the spire. A hush falls as they gaze upon the towering structure that has sheltered them for generations. Cracks mar its once graceful lines, and rubble from the quake litters the perimeter. Many weep softly. Lir'ava raises her hands, chanting a farewell in her language. The words resonate off the damaged walls, a final tribute to their ancestral home. Then, With heavy hearts, they turn to the forest. The journey to the canyon is arduous, strewn with fallen trees and unstable ground. But they press on, forging new paths. Caleb helps navigate, identifying safer routes around sinkholes and quake-fractured ravines. Yeleth moves with agile swiftness, scouting ahead. Lir'ava keeps the column organized, ensuring the weak or wounded are supported. The combined efforts reflect a unity that transcends the day-to-day friction. Over 2 days of travel, they struggle through thick undergrowth, cross streams that swirl with silt from the quake, and face sporadic aftershocks that rattle nerves. Yet each trial further cements their determination. Finally, on the morning of the 3rd day, they crest a ridge and look down upon the Canyon of Echoes, a grand expanse of layered rock arches, some forming natural bridges over a wide valley. Soft light filters through the stone formations, painting the canyon floor in shifting bands of gold and amber. A collective sigh of awe escapes the tribe. Even Caleb, who has seen wonders on countless worlds, stands breathless. This place radiates a primordial power, as though shaped by eons of wind and water. Lir'ava leads them down a winding path into the canyon, selecting a sheltered alcove where they can establish a temporary camp. Tents are erected from woven materials, fires lit for warmth and cooking. The tribe spreads out, exploring nearby streams and hidden nooks. As the sun sinks low, the canyon walls reflect a deep, coppery glow, and a chorus of night creatures stirs. For the first time in days, there is a palpable sense of safety. The tension in Caleb's shoulders eases. That evening, the tribe gathers around a central fire. Lir'ava stands with Yeleth and Caleb beside her, addressing the people. "We have survived the quake, the assault and the journey here. Our old home may be lost, but our spirit remains unbroken. Let this place be our refuge and the start of a new chapter." A ripple of agreement runs through the crowd. Caleb steps forward, raising a wooden cup carved with the tribe's sigils. "To the matron, to Yeleth, to Caleb, let their bond guide us to prosperity." Caleb glances at Lir'ava, who meets his gaze with a solemn but hopeful smile. Then his eyes shift to Yeleth, who stands at his other side, her amethyst eyes reflecting the glow of the flames. She gives a small, private nod of reassurance. Together they step forward, each touching the cup as Caleb pours a ceremonial drink. It symbolizes unity and renewal. One by one, tribe members come forward to taste the drink, forging a collective vow to protect each other. The night air hums with a sense of rebirth. Drums begin to beat, echoing off the canyon walls in haunting reverberations. Some of the tension and sorrow lifts as people dance and sing, honoring both their loss and their survival. Caleb slips away from the crowd, finding a quiet perch on a rocky outcropping overlooking the canyon. The stars are brilliant here, unclouded by dust or city lights. The swirl of the alien sky captivates him, reminding him of the countless nights he spent alone on remote worlds, feeling the ache of solitude. Tonight, though, he feels something else: belonging. A soft footstep alerts him that he isn't alone. He turns to see Yeleth approaching, her hair loose around her shoulders, catching the starlight in delicate shades of blue. She settles beside him, a contemplative hush between them. He reaches out, and she takes his hand, weaving her fingers with his. They sit like that for a while, the distant drums pulsing below. At length she speaks, voice hushed. "It's beautiful here, but it doesn't feel like home yet." He nods. "Give it time. We'll make it ours." He glances at her profile, the graceful sweep of her ear and the soft glow on her cheeks. "I meant what I said before. I want you beside me wherever this path leads." She smiles, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I believe you, and I want the same." Moments later, they hear another soft sound behind them. Lir'ava steps into view, her expression gentle. Yeleth stiffens slightly, but Caleb motions for her to stay. Lir'ava looks from one to the other, then gives a small, understanding smile. She settles on his other side, so he sits between them under the stars. None of them speak for a while, content to share the quiet. The subtle interplay of the canyon's echoes drifts upward, mixed with the faint resonance of the tribe's celebration. Finally, Lir'ava places a hand on Caleb's leg, a silent gesture of acceptance. Yeleth, seeing this, relaxes. She rests a hand on her mother's forearm. The hush is thick with unspoken gratitude, a familial closeness that transcends the typical boundaries. Caleb's chest feels full, a blend of relief and cautious joy. He realizes that despite the peril, despite the complexities, they have forged something new, a bond shaped by shared struggle and genuine affection. He leans his head back, gazing at the alien stars. The path ahead won't be easy, but for the first time since losing his partner, he feels that love, trust, and hope are possible again. They remain under the stars until the chill forces them to rise and return to the warmth of the fires. Hand in hand, the three of them move through the makeshift camp, greeted by nods of respect. The tribe sees their matron, her daughter, and the human who brought them a new perspective. Hushed murmurs pass among the people, but no one interferes. A new acceptance begins to bloom, fostered by the day's hardships and triumphs. Late in the evening, as the fires die down and most of the tribe retires, Caleb, Lir'ava, and Yeleth find themselves in a newly erected pavilion near the canyon wall. It's simple but cozy, the floor lined with mats and blankets. A single low-burning lamp casts flickering light. They settle among the cushions, the night's chill seeping in through the open sides. Yeleth shifts, uncertain, glancing at her mother. Lir'ava offers a soft smile, patting the space beside her. Caleb quietly sits on her other side. The hush is heavy with anticipation, each of them feeling the weight of possibility. Lir'ava speaks first, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have lost much, but I believe we have also gained something, a deeper bond that defies old norms. I can no longer turn from the feelings we share, no matter how unusual they might seem." Yeleth's eyes glimmer, her breath unsteady. "Mother, I never wished to take anything from you. I only wanted—" "Hush," Lir'ava says gently, reaching out to brush a lock of hair from Yeleth's face. "You're my daughter, and I love you. If your heart finds a connection with Caleb, that does not lessen mine. We must navigate this carefully, but perhaps together we can find fulfillment." Caleb's throat feels tight. He touches Lir'ava's hand, then Yeleth's, a small, silent vow. "I don't have the answers," he admits, voice trembling, "but I'm willing to walk this path if you are." They sit there, entwined, the flickering lamplight dancing over their faces. Tentatively, Lir'ava leans in to kiss Caleb, a gesture charged with the memory of their first night. Yeleth watches for a moment, and he senses a swirl of anxiety in her posture, so he turns to her, offering a soft kiss as well, a reassurance that she too is part of this circle. What follows is a delicate negotiation of boundaries, unspoken but felt in every touch. Yeleth and Lir'ava do not cross lines with each other, but they share a mutual affection for Caleb, and they each need to feel his presence, his warmth, in a way that affirms their bond. The hush in the pavilion is broken only by the soft sounds of breath and the rustle of blankets. It is not the wild passion of a single coupling, but a tender acknowledgement of multiple hearts, forging a single, unorthodox connection. At times, Lir'ava and Yeleth exchange small smiles, a mother and daughter who have found an unexpected harmony. Caleb moves gently between them, mindful of the complexities, yet guided by a deep well of feeling that has grown for both. Eventually, a fade of lamplight encloses them in darkness, and they settle into a shared warmth. In the hush, he feels Lir'ava's hand pressed to his chest, Yeleth's fingers linked with his. The planet's subtle tremors remain in the distant background, but for now, they are at peace. When dawn breaks over the canyon, the tribe awakens to begin the work of establishing a permanent settlement. Together, they build shelters against the stone walls. set up watchpoints above the arches. Over time, the rumblings of the planet subside, and news arrives that the rival tribe has withdrawn to their own territory, licking their wounds. A fragile peace settles over the region. Caleb helps design more stable structures using knowledge gleaned from experiences on quake-prone planets. Yeleth spearheads explorations of hidden canyon pathways, discovering fresh water sources and new sites suitable for growth. Lir'ava oversees everything, still the matron, but more open to new ideas than ever. Their bond, unique and unconventional, quietly becomes an unspoken pillar for the tribe, a testament to adaptability and acceptance. Weeks turn into months. The new settlement thrives. The once harsh canyon transforms into a refuge, gardens taking root in pockets of fertile soil, tents replaced by sturdier huts built into the natural alcoves. At night, the alien stars swirl overhead, a reminder of the universe's vastness and the improbable connections that can blossom within it. In time, a final sense of closure arrives when a scout reports that the old spire collapsed during another quake. There is a collective mourning for the ancestral home, but also a sense of relief that they left in time and that they carry their heritage within them, not bound by walls of stone. On a peaceful evening, Caleb stands on a rocky ledge overlooking the canyon with Lir'ava and Yeleth at his sides. They watch the setting suns bathe the stone arches in brilliant orange. He no longer feels like an outsider. The tattoos on his skin now mingle with newly etched patterns gifted to him by the tribe's artisans, signifying his place among them. Yeleth links her arm with his, smiling. "You once said you had no place to call home. Do you think you've found it here?" He breathes in the warm air, the faint scent of dust and canyon flowers. Lir'ava rests her hand on his shoulder, her eyes reflecting the fiery sky. "I do," he replies, voice steady with conviction. "Here, with both of you, I found something I never thought I would again." They exchange quiet, heartfelt smiles, a silent acknowledgement that the trials they faced have forged them into something stronger. Below, the tribe moves with purpose, continuing to shape the settlement. The legacy of the matron and her daughter intertwines with the path of a human explorer who dared to open his heart once more. As the suns dip below the horizon, the glow along the canyon walls fades into a gentle twilight. Stars emerge in the deepening sky, echoing the countless possibilities that still lie ahead. Yet no matter what new challenges come their way, they will face them together. The hush of this moment is final and complete, a promise that their journey, though ongoing in life, needs no sequel in the telling. They have found their resolution in each other, a love that transcends fear, tradition, and the boundaries of worlds.